What if your thoughts were not only your own? What if what you call I was the channel through which the divine expresses, creates, and transforms the world? God thinks through you, not as a poetic metaphor, but as a living truth. You are the instrument, the meeting point between the eternal and the temporal. Every idea, every genuine desire, every creative impulse is a whisper from the infinite seeking to manifest through you. In this revealing work, Charles F. Haanel guides us beyond the surface of the law of attraction into the very core of creative power, consciousness aligned with the source. This is not a manual for wish-making. It is a revelation, a call to remember that thought is not merely a mental act, but a sacred bridge between the invisible and the visible. Here you will discover how to attune to the universal mind, how your thoughts shape matter, and how conscious manifestation is not magic. It is divine alignment. Prepare yourself not just to think differently, but to think like God, to turn your mind into the temple of possibility and your life into a living expression of spirit. Welcome to God Thinks Through You, the art of manifesting the eternal through the human, the art of remembering who you truly are. This treatise is not an experiment, nor is it a philosophical speculation or a poetic attempt to please romantic minds. It is a science, and like any science, it is based on immutable, observable, and reproducible principles by anyone who thinks clearly, acts methodically, and desires sincerely. For years, it has been asserted that everything a person needs to transform their existence lies in their mind. This is not a mystical opinion nor a moral consolation. It is an operative law as exact as the law of gravity. The mind does not react, the mind creates. What you call destiny is, in fact, printed thought, the invisible substance of the universe. The modern reader has witnessed the expansion of electricity, the rise of the airplane, and the invisible power of Hertzian waves, yet they struggle to accept that their own mind, more subtle and powerful than all these physical forces, is capable of designing, directing, and determining the course of their existence. This disbelief is nothing more than organized ignorance, and ignorance, like darkness, disappears at the spark of clear knowledge. This book intends to be that spark. Here you will not find superstition, no appeals to the favors of external deities, or blind luck. What is taught here is that the universal mind, whether called God, nature, or law, responds with absolute precision to human thought when it is formulated with clarity, emotion, and persistence. Many men and women fail not because of bad luck, but because they think in fragments, live without mental direction, and act as if external conditions are more real than their own inner convictions. This mistake is fatal. The universe responds to the image held in the mind, not to a passing desire or aimless prayer. All the power of the universe is within reach of the one who understands this truth. Organized, directed, and sustained thought is the supreme creative force. I have titled this work The Science of Reality, because reality is not what you see, but what you think with persistence. The visible is not cause, but effect. Therefore, changing reality requires changing its origin, the mind. But not just any mind, it must be a waking, disciplined mind aligned with universal laws. The reader who continues these pages with an open mind and trained will not only obtain results, but will acquire a new identity. For one who masters their thoughts becomes the cause, and one who becomes the cause ceases to be a slave to circumstances and becomes the master of their world. This volume has been conceived for that type of reader, not those who dream, but those who build, not those who pray, but those who know, not those who wait, but those who think. And if you are one of them, then this book has not come to you by accident. Remember, there are no accidents in a mental universe, only resonances. God Thinks Through You, The Art of Conscious Manifestation by Charles F. Haanel. We have noticed that over 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by clicking the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. The Law of Mental Correspondence. The external world as the exact reflection of internal thought. Nothing in the universe is isolated. Nothing is arbitrary. What man calls the external world is nothing more than the condensed projection of an invisible world, the world of thought. This is the essential premise upon which the entire science of reality rests. The principle is eternal and absolute. Everything that is outside was first inside. In the ancient schools of wisdom, this truth was known under the Hermetic formula, as above, so below, as within, so without. But in our modern age, where electricity has been tamed and industry has challenged time, this law has been ignored in favor of material illusions. However, it continues to operate with the precision of a mathematical equation. Man's life is ultimately a mental image projected into the universal substance, which responds like an exact mirror. Thought is not merely a brain function, it is a force, and more so, it is a cause. Every thought that man holds with clarity is a seed, which, once implanted in the soil of the subconscious, grows, strengthens, and ultimately appears in the form of external conditions, events, and relationships. There is no chance in this. If thought is clear, the manifestation will be sharp. If thought is contradictory, the result will be confusion. If thought is sustained with fear, the result will be that which is most feared. For the universe, being mind does not judge, it simply responds. Here we must stop to consider a fundamental point. The mind does not create through loose emotions or vague desires. It creates by vibrational correspondence. Like attracts like because like is its reflection. When a man thinks in terms of scarcity, the universe does not punish. It simply adjusts. When a man thinks in terms of abundance with inner certainty and without contradiction, the universe does not reward. It simply obeys. This is how the law of mental correspondence functions. Now you may ask, why then are there so many thoughts that do not produce visible effects? The answer is simple, because they are not charged with direction, emotion, or sufficient repetition. Thought, in order to become creative, must be emotionally defined, sustained, and repeated with faith. Imagine a lens that concentrates the sunlight. If the light is diffuse, it does not produce enough heat to light a piece of paper. But if it is concentrated on a single point, fire appears. This is how thought works. Without direction, it is simply scattered energy. With direction, it is causal power. The external world has no will. It has no initiative of its own. It is the unconditional reflection of the image you are consciously or unconsciously holding within you. This is why the ignorant blame fate, while the wise correct their thinking. There is no effect without cause, no harvest without sowing, no external without internal image. What you call problems are past thoughts that have taken form. What you call success is also organized thought, maintained, protected, and brought to completion. Therefore, if you wish to change your conditions, do not fight against the external. Do not curse the fruit. Return to the root, the thought. This principle is as exact as any law of physics. If you throw a stone into the air, it will fall. If you hold thoughts of courage, confidence, and purpose, you will get corresponding results. If you think with doubt, guilt, or resentment, you will attract conditions that reflect them. The universe does not make mistakes, but there is a warning. Thought must be conscious. Most people do not think, they react. They do not design, they repeat. Their minds are like echo chambers of foreign beliefs, sensationalist news, and inherited fears. Then when the world returns chaos, they wonder where it came from. Therefore, the first great duty of anyone who wishes to apply the science of reality is this: take control of your own thoughts. Thinking is not merely remembering, analyzing, or desiring. Thinking is creating an image with direction, energizing it emotionally, and holding it in silence until it materializes. From now on, every time you observe a condition, stop and ask yourself, what thought preceded it? What conviction sustained it? What image, habit, or vibration brought it to me? When you begin to trace your conditions back to their mental origin, you will be entering not into a system of belief, but into a practical science. And once you accept that the world is crystallized mind, you will have in your hands the lever to move your universe. The law of correspondence does not need your belief to function. It only needs you to think with purpose. Because what you are, what you live, and what you have is simply what your thought has been, multiplied by time. Chapter 2. Thought as Directed Energy. How thought is an organizing and creative vibration. Thought is the highest form of energy known to man. It is not a philosophical abstraction or a passive brain function. It is an organized vibration that acts upon the invisible substance of the universe and molds it according to its nature. The mind is a more perfect electrical instrument than any laboratory invention, and thought is the current that flows through it. Where there is thought, There is direction. Where there is direction, there is organization. And where there is organization, sooner or later there is form. Every visible creation begins with an invisible impulse. The greatest cathedral began as a mental image. The prosperous business, the work of art, the symphony, the scientific discovery, everything that ennobles or transforms man first existed as thought, and only afterward as fact. And if this is true for great achievements, it is also true for small ones. Life itself is a parade of crystallized ideas. Modern science has proven that all matter vibrates. Rocks, water, air, the human body, all are in motion. But what still escapes common understanding is that the most subtle, powerful, and penetrating vibration of all is that of concentrated thought. This vibration does not stay within the mind that emits it. It projects outward, travels through space, influences conditions, and, in due time, returns as experience. Thought does not disappear. Thought lives, and moreover, thought builds. For this force to be more than a mere accident, it must be directed. Most people think as they breathe, automatically, unconsciously, and without intention. But thought produced in this way is weak, scattered, and incapable of organization. The mind, to be truly creative, must become a focus of directed energy, not a field of chaotic currents. When you think with clarity, intensity, and repetition, you are vibrating on a frequency that affects the very fabric of the universe. And this fabric, what the ancients called the ether, and what we now know as the universal mental field, is moldable. Just as the needle of a phonograph imprints the vibrations of sound onto a disc, your thought imprints onto the universal substance an image that will eventually seek to manifest as form. There is no essential difference between thought and electricity. Both are vibrations, both follow laws. However, thought has something more, conscious direction. While electricity moves along physical pathways, thought can penetrate any obstacle, travel in silence, and attract to itself everything that vibrates at its own frequency. Thought is a vibratory magnet, and like any magnet, it does not attract by chance, but by correspondence. That which you hold mentally with strength and faith will be attracted to you, not by magic, but by vibrational affinity. That is to say, like attracts like. You cannot attract health while vibrating in fear of disease. You cannot attract wealth while your thought revolves around scarcity. The universe does not respond to your words, but to your actual vibratory tone. That is why we assert, thinking is not wishing. Thinking is emitting a vibration held in a straight line toward a clear goal. This vibration does not need to be violent or dramatic. The most potent energy is that which acts in silence, steadily like the sun that warms without making a sound. So your thought must be precise, constant, and defined. Every directed thought is an invisible architect drawing blueprints on the fabric of destiny. And what is directing thought? It is choosing an ideal, visualizing it clearly, holding it in the mind without interruption or doubt, feeding it with positive emotion, and finally acting in harmony with that mental image, without betraying it with negative words or contradictory actions. When this is done correctly, the vibration is so intense that reality has no choice but to organize itself around that frequency. This process is more exact than any chemical operation, and the one who masters it masters their life. It is not about thinking loudly, but about thinking clearly. It is not about desiring anxiously, but about knowing with certainty. For the vibration of clear thought, sustained with faith, is the most constructive force ever placed in the hands of man. Therefore, from this moment on, observe your mind as a precision instrument. Everything you think with intention shapes your future. No thought is ever lost. No vibration ever fails to leave its mark. You are the center of emission. You are the mental engineer. And every idea you hold is a command to the universe, written in vibrational language, which will be obeyed sooner or later, as long as it is not contradicted. Thought is a sacred tool. Use it with purpose, and the universe, which is sensitive mind, will respond with form, with substance, and with accuracy. Chapter 3. Will as a shaping force of the universe. Will not as a physical force, but as a spiritual directive. Much has been said about will, as if it were a kind of muscular tension of the soul, a violent effort, an act of forced conquest over the world. But this idea is as erroneous as it is ineffective. True will does not shout, does not push, does not struggle. True will directs, and its power lies not in the intensity of the effort, but in the clarity of the purpose. Will, in its highest definition, is the ability to keep thought in a chosen direction without distraction, without doubt, and without hesitation. It is not a force acting upon things, but a directive that organizes mental, emotional, and physical energies around a central axis, the internal image held with determination. When will is aligned with clear thought, it becomes the master axis of creation. It is the invisible plant with which man moves his world. Every great work, every great character, every great destiny has been forged by will applied with wisdom, not by brute force or favorable chance. Observe nature, the river that flows steadily without deviation, carving the hardest rock. It does not do so through violence, but through persistence. This is how will acts, not as an impulsive torrent, but as a directed current. The one who understands this is freed from the futile struggle against the external world and begins to work from the plane where everything originates, the mental. Most people live under the illusion that their will must impose itself upon circumstances, but this is the approach of the ignorant. The wise do not impose their will upon things. They impose their direction upon their thought and allow the universe to obey by law. There is no need to dominate others or bend matter. It is enough to direct the mental image with firmness, conviction, and consistency. Here lies the difference between casual thinking and creative thinking. One wanders, the other holds firm. One is foam, the other is steel. Will is what transforms thought into form. Without it, thought dissipates. With it, thought becomes decree, and the universe responds to the decree with the obedience of a silent servant. But there is a warning. Will cannot contradict universal law. It cannot be used to destroy, lie, or steal, because the universal mind is built upon harmony, order, and truth. Attempting to use will against the law is like trying to build a structure on an abyss. It will collapse sooner or later. Therefore, before employing your will, define your purpose. Let it be clear. Let it be noble. Let it be in harmony with the higher order of life. Once this is done, fix your thought in that direction. Do not abandon it. Do not contradict it with doubts or discordant emotions. Make it the center of your daily attention, and will transform it into an organizing vibration. Will is not physical force, but it is more powerful than any muscle. It is not felt in the fists, but in the continuity of purpose. It is not a shout. It is sustained inner silence. When you think of a goal and keep it present day after day without giving up, your will becomes a living current that reorganizes your vibratory field and modifies external conditions by resonance. This is how inventions, healings, and life transformations are born, not by luck but by will applied to correct thought. A thought without will is a projectile without direction. A will without thought is a horse without a rider. But thought and will united form the royal carriage of the creative soul. Here is the great secret. Will does not struggle. It simply refuses to move from the chosen path. In that serene refusal, in that firmness without violence, in that loyalty to the internal image, resides the true power. When a man says, "This is what I have decided, and I will hold to it until it becomes visible," and does so without anxiety, without haste, without doubt, then the universe begins to obey. For in his will lies the echo of the divine will that shaped the stars. You are not in this world to react, but to create, and your creation begins where your thought finds a clear direction, and your will holds it without wavering. That is the moment when the idea becomes force, and force inevitably becomes form. Chapter 4. The subconscious as a precision mechanism. The automatic mind as the tireless worker of sustained thought. The greatest ally of the thinking man is not brute force nor external opportunity, but an invisible, precise, obedient, and absolutely infallible servant, the subconscious. Few understand that this part of the mind, far from being a vague and mystical realm, is actually a mental execution mechanism, as precise as a mathematical instrument. Where conscious thought decides, the subconscious executes. Where will points the direction, the subconscious paves the way. The subconscious does not reason, judge, or form opinions. Its function is not to choose, but to materialize, and it does so with terrifying fidelity. Once an idea has been impressed with clarity and sufficient repetition, this lower level, what is actually a deeper instance, takes command and carries it out through both visible and invisible channels. This is why many people live under chains they themselves forged with unconscious thoughts, and also why others ascend effortlessly, having installed the correct image in their subconscious. Understand well, the subconscious is the repository of all beliefs, habits, emotions, impressions, and repeated tendencies. It is the living memory of the soul, the hidden workshop where mental forms are clothed in flesh and reality. It works tirelessly while you sleep, while you talk, while you forget what you once thought. It does not stop, nor does it contradict itself. It works with the raw material you give it, through sustained thought, felt emotion, and words charged with conviction. On the conscious plane, thought is like an architect designing a plan. On the subconscious plane, that design becomes a building. But if the plans are confused, contradictory, or weak, the result will be equally weak or chaotic. That is why repetition is emphasized. What is repeated with emotion and clarity is engraved, and what is engraved becomes destiny. The subconscious does not distinguish between truth or lie, between desire or fear. It only knows one thing: vibratory intensity. If your conscious mind feeds fear frequently, the subconscious accepts it as an order. If, on the other hand, you feed an image of health, abundance, or sustained peace, even if external conditions say otherwise, the subconscious will silently work to build that image into reality. Thus, it is said that the subconscious is a tireless worker. Its activity is constant, like the root of a tree working in the darkness, while the fruit ripens on the branch. It does not require physical effort, nor does it demand struggle. It only asks for one thing: clarity and persistence. With these two, it builds worlds. In ancient texts, this level of the mind was called the animal weapon, the etheric body, or the bush soul. Modern science describes it in neurological terms, but it still does not fully understand that this level of the mind is a vibratory antenna, a bridge between man and the universal mind. For what the subconscious accepts as real, the universe accepts as decree. For this reason, strict control must be exercised over what is thought, felt, repeated, feared, and desired. The subconscious mind has no sense of humor, nor a pause for reflection. It does not ask if what you think is good for you, it simply executes. The subconscious governs circulation, digestion, cellular regeneration, but also external coincidences, emerging opportunities, and seemingly accidental encounters. This mind acts on both the body and the world, being in direct contact with the universal intelligence that underlies all form. Here lies the secret of all great human achievements: imprint a clear, defined, and harmonious image in the subconscious and protect it from any contradictory thoughts. This is done through daily repetition, emotional visualization, silent affirmation, and inner silence. When this is done, the subconscious activates resources that the conscious mind ignores, moves people, alters conditions, redirects the body, and reorganizes circumstances. It is literally a magical force under scientific governance. The average person does not know this, but repetitive thought is like a hammer striking the mold of their future life, and every emotion felt intensely is an order carved into the stone of destiny. That is why, if you want to change your world, do not start with the external. Go to the cause, look within you. Examine what you have thought, believed, and feared. That is the raw material the subconscious has been working tirelessly on. If you wish to change direction, do not curse the work. Change the plans, correct the image, hold the new idea, give it time, and your invisible worker will start again. Without complaints, without reproaches, without rest. The subconscious does not sleep, does not forget, does not doubt. It only obeys, and you, if you learn to govern it, will be the true builder of your destiny. Chapter 5. The Universal Mind, the whole that responds to everything. The eternal, impersonal, and exact mental field. Everything that exists is immersed in a living, vibrating, intelligent, and infinite substance. This substance is not a belief nor a metaphysical hypothesis. It is an operating reality as precise as light and as infallible as gravity. This substance is what we call the universal mind. It is the eternal field in which all things have their origin. It is the boundless ocean where thought floats, where form is born, where conditions dissolve and destinies are restructured. The universal mind is not a person. It has no favoritism, emotions, or prejudices. It is the impersonal whole that responds to any mental vibration emitted by the individual, whether elevated or declaimed, clear or confused, harmonious or chaotic. The law that governs it is simple. It corresponds exactly to what is imprinted on it, and since it has no morality or intention, but only principle, it is absolutely just, absolutely neutral, and absolutely precise. From this infinite mind, the planets, the laws that govern them, the mathematical harmony of the universe, the life organized in every seed, and the reflective thought of man all emerged. But its function did not end at the moment of creation. The universal mind continues to create, to respond, and to reproduce exactly what human thought delivers to it. It is an eternal laboratory where every mental image becomes a vibration, and every vibration with sufficient intensity becomes form. Here lies the key to all power. The individual is a partial expression of the total universal mind. That is to say, what you think within you does not remain confined to your skull. Your thoughts are waves that enter the infinite ocean of the cosmic mind, and there they provoke reactions, attract forms, reorganize conditions, and return as concrete facts. Prayer, visualization, and affirmation are not mystical mechanisms. They are vibrational emissions that the universal mind receives as orders, but it is not enough to desire. It is not enough to ask. It is not enough to think sporadically. The universal mind responds only to the dominant, sustained, and emotionalized vibration of the individual. This vibration is the signal, the mold, the plan, and it simply builds with millimetric precision what has been ordered. Whoever understands this stops begging and begins to affirm. They stop fearing and begin to direct because they know that the law is on their side when their mind is in harmony with it. It is often asked why good men suffer while the wicked prosper. The answer is not in morality, but in the mind. The universe does not respond to theoretical goodness. It responds to organized thought. A man can be honest and poor if his thoughts vibrate in fear, doubt, or resignation. Another may lack virtue, but be convinced of his success, and thus the universal mind obeys him, not because it rewards him, but because it responds without judgment to the dominant vibratory cause. This may seem unfair at first, but in reality, it is supreme justice. The universe does not discriminate. It only reflects, it only multiplies, it only orders according to sustained thought. At this point, it is essential to understand that there is no separation between man and the universal mind. Every human being is a cell of that total mind, just as a spark is part of the fire or a wave is part of the sea. Therefore, the creative power of the universe is accessible through individual thought, as long as that thought is clear, defined, harmonious, and persistent. Most people unknowingly remain disconnected from this power. Why? Because their thoughts are scattered, their emotions contradictory, their beliefs inherited from collective fear. But when an individual awakens, when they take control of their thoughts, when they carefully select what they imagine and affirm, when they train their mind to align with good, with beauty, with certainty, then they become a conscious co-creator of their destiny. There is no limit to what you can receive from the universal mind, except the limit you impose upon yourself through ignorance or doubt. It knows no scarcity. It knows no difficulty. It knows no impossibility. All ideas, all solutions, all forms that have been or will be, already exist in potential in this eternal mental field. The only thing separating them from you is the degree of clarity with which you think them. The universal mind is the infinite bank of images ready to be called to form. You are the printer, you are the vibrational emitter, you are the channel, and everything you hold within you, with conviction, will be reproduced with accuracy, like a wave that when reflected carries the perfect echo of your original emission. Therefore, before speaking, think. Before acting, vibrate in what you desire. Before expecting results, align yourself internally with the law that never fails. For the universal mind does not punish or reward, it simply executes. You are not an orphan in chaos. You are a living expression of absolute order, and every thought you emit is a key that opens or closes the doors of your reality. Chapter 6. Desire as a signal of latent power. All authentic desire is a divine order seeking execution. Desire, properly understood, is not a whim of the soul, nor a fleeting longing, nor an emotional disturbance. Authentic desire is a signal from the spirit indicating the presence of a latent possibility awaiting its manifestation. Just as the seed desires to germinate because within it the flower already sleeps, desire in man is the language through which the universal mind announces to him. This can be yours if you choose it. Rejecting a deep desire out of fear, doubt, or false modesty is denying the secret command of the Creator, because no legitimate longing is born without the form of its fulfillment existing in the vast network of the universal mind. What you desire with all your being is not an illusion. It is a direction, and that direction is the route that connects you with the portion of the universe destined to express itself through you. However, it is necessary to distinguish between fleeting desires that arise from agitated emotion and essential desires, those that return again and again, those that resonate like an internal echo, those that are revealed in silence when there is no external pressure. These desires are not the product of the ego but of the soul, and it is precisely these that deserve to be elevated to the rank of purpose. Desire is the spark, the sustained thought, the mold, the will, the tool, the subconscious, the worker, the universal mind, the field that obeys. This is how the complete chain of manifestation is formed. But without desire, there is no initial ignition. Desire is the engine, the signal that something is destined to be born through you. It is a silent order emitted by your higher self, the part of you that already knows the way. How is a desire strengthened to become creative power? First, you must be purified of all doubt. A desire that hesitates loses strength. On the other hand, a clear, accepted, visualized and affirmed desire becomes a magnet that reorganizes the atoms of the world into form. The universe loves the person who knows what they want because in them it finds a perfect channel for expression. There is no creation without desire. Nothing is built if it is not first desired. The sculptor desires the form before carving the marble. The merchant desires abundance before moving his gears. The inventor desires the solution before invoking his genius. And each one, when they hold that desire with persistence, discipline, and faith, finds that the world begins to respond as if the pieces of the universe were aligning one by one before their internal vision. This principle is as exact as any physical law. Vibrant and clear desire generates mental waves that, when sustained, begin to attract people, ideas, means, and circumstances in harmony. Not by chance but by resonance, not by miracle but by law. And here we must warn, the desire that is not executed becomes frustration. The desire that is denied becomes bitterness. The desire that is postponed becomes internal disintegration because the soul was designed to expand. And desire is the impulse for that expansion. Denying it is denying your growth. Accepting it, affirming it, and taking it into action is becoming a channel for universal purpose. Desire is not the enemy of the spirit, as certain philosophies have taught. Authentic desire is the early announcement of what has already been granted in the invisible plane. It is a seed that carries within itself the promise of its blossoming. You do not desire the impossible. You desire what is already vibrating in the universal mind as a possibility waiting to be called to form. Therefore, do not deny your desire. Do not suppress it, trivialize it, or ignore it. Examine it, purify it, elevate it, and then firmly give it to the mold of organized thought. Imagine its fulfillment. Feel its presence. Be grateful for its realization and act as one who has already received it. For in the law of the mind, receiving is not the first step, it is the last. The first step is desiring with knowledge. Remember, desire is not weakness, it is direction. Desire is not lack, it is awareness of possibility. Desire is not anxiety, it is the voice of what already exists calling from the future, and if you learn to listen to it and transform it into image, word, and action, you will have understood the secret of the creators, the achievers, and the wise. They do not repress desire, they obey it with purpose. Chapter 7, Visualization and Silence, Tools of the Mental Builder. Why is it that what is seen inside is projected into the visible? If thought is the invisible cause of all form and desire is the signal of latent power, then visualization is the process by which that power is organized into a clear and specific image. Visualizing is not imagining for fun or daydreaming without purpose. Visualizing is building. It is sculpting the mind with sharp lines. It is tracing in the invisible field the form that will become visible. The universe does not respond to the abstract. It responds to the defined, and the defined is born in the mind through visualization. Every inventor has seen their invention finished on the inside before assembling the first piece. Every architect has walked the halls of their building in the inner eye before placing a stone. Every achiever in any field has held the image of their success on the screen of their consciousness, with such precision that the world has had no choice but to reflect it. Because what is seen on the inside, with persistence and emotion, is inevitably projected onto the plane of reality. This is the law. Just as a lens directs light, so visualization directs thought. It is the method by which mental chaos becomes creative order. Now, visualizing does not mean forcing mental images or drawing scenes with agitation. It means seeing with serenity, with purpose, with faith. It is more like contemplation than effort. It is focusing attention on a desired form, imbuing it with life, certainty, and anticipatory gratitude. The mental image thus created becomes a vibratory mold, and that mold will be filled by the universal mind with corresponding material, just as a mold defines the shape of molten metal poured into it. But here comes into play a second tool, as powerful as visualization: silence. Because while visualization builds, silence allows the construction to settle, to be engraved in the subconscious, to penetrate the deepest layers of the being without interference. Silence is the fertile field where the mental seed germinates. In silence, thought ceases to be noise and becomes decree. An agitated mind cannot create with precision, just as murky water cannot reflect clearly. That is why anyone who desires to master the art of mental creation must learn to quiet the world, calm the body, silence the senses, and hold an image within a space of no resistance. Here lies the true secret of effective prayer, correct mental treatment, and vibratory affirmation. It is not enough to say, "One must see and then one must be silent." Visualize with intensity and then surrender to silence. It is not inactivity, it is collaboration with the invisible process. It is allowing the planted image to be nurtured by the universal intelligence that responds without error when the silence is deep. The individual mind touches the ocean of the whole, and it is there that the mental image merges with the creative power of the universe. When this happens, the result is inevitable. It cannot be avoided. It can only be delayed by doubt or contradiction. But if the thought is clear, the image is precise, and the silence is sustained, the external form must manifest. Many fail because they do not understand this principle. They interrupt the process with anxiety, impatience, or opposing thoughts. They visualize in the morning and fear at night, declare for a moment and lament for hours. In this way, the mental mold fractures, energy disperses, and the universe becomes confused in its response. But you, who understand the law, must act like a serene builder. Visualize in detail, feel the image as real, live in it internally. Then enter the silence and every day return to it with firmness, with gratitude, with serene expectation. Do it without rush and without pause, and the universe will work in your favor, just as the seed germinates underground in silence but with certainty. The power of man is not in shouting to the world what he desires, but in seeing it first on the inside and then being silent, knowing that the law is at work. Visualization and silence, the image and the void, the form and the mold, the inner word and the receptive rest, these are the tools of the true mental creator. And you, if you learn to use them correctly, will not have to chase reality. It will come to you as the shadow comes to the body, as the fruit comes to the flower. Chapter 8. Organized thinking, method, rhythm, and persistence. It is not enough to think. Structure, sequence, and vibratory repetition are required. Thinking, in its deepest sense, is not merely producing ideas. It is not speculation, nor erratic reflection, nor jumping from one thought to another like someone sailing without a rudder. Thinking, in the context of creative science, is building a mental structure with order, method, and sustained rhythm. Because thought, to be an efficient cause of reality, must be organized with the same precision as a cathedral is built or a symphony composed. Nature constantly teaches us this truth. All enduring creation, whether a mountain, a flower, or a solar system, occurs according to a pattern, a law, an exact sequence. Chaos does not create, order does. And if the universe is structured according to immutable proportions, then the thought we interact with to produce form must also obey similar laws. The human mind has unlimited power, but only when that power is focused. A ray of sunlight by itself warms, but when focused through a lens, it can ignite fire. The same occurs with scattered thought. It is lukewarm. Concentrated and organized, it becomes creative. Therefore, anyone who wishes to operate as a conscious force in their world must learn to organize their thoughts with three essential elements: method, rhythm, and persistence. Method consists of giving thought a clear, defined, and specific objective. A thought without an objective is like an arrow shot into the air with no target. To think correctly, one must know what they want, visualize it with precision, and turn it into a central image around which the entire mental process will organize itself. Rhythm, in turn, is the harmonic repetition of that thought at constant intervals. What is thought once is weakly impressed. What is thought every day with equal intensity is etched in the subconscious and becomes a permanent vibration. And that vibration is what begins to reconfigure the environment, attract conditions, and move the invisible pieces of the universal board. Everything in nature obeys rhythm, the cycles of the day, the heartbeat, the seasons of the year. Therefore, thought must also follow a rhythm if it wishes to integrate with the laws of the universe. Persistence is the final hallmark of the creative mind. To think today with faith and tomorrow with doubt is to destroy with one hand what was built with the other. Organized thought requires consistency, loyalty, and serene determination. One does not abandon a building because the windows have not yet been placed. They continue, stone by stone, until it is complete. The same happens with reality. One must sustain the image until it matures. This persistence is not agitation, not anxiety, not struggle. It is certainty. It is the internal willingness to stay the course, even when there are no immediate signs. It is knowing that the seed, once planted with firm thought, cannot avoid growing. The mind that holds an idea with order and positive emotion day after day is organizing an invisible building that will, sooner or later, appear before the eyes of the world. This is the art of organized thinking, not thinking randomly but with purpose, not thinking once but with rhythm, not thinking with weakness but with vibratory persistence. The mistake of many students of the mind is thinking with sporadic enthusiasm, visualizing without method, and affirming without continuity. They desire a different reality, but have not learned to hold the image with structure. The universe does not respond to brief impulses, but to sustained ones. Just as the constant drop of water drills into rock, so organized thought penetrates the matter of the world and gives it new form. Therefore, if you wish to create wealth, peace, health, power, do not settle for thinking about it once, nor for formulating it vaguely. Establish a method. Define what you want, visualize it daily, affirm it with gratitude and aligned emotions. Then establish a rhythm, 10 minutes each morning, 10 minutes each night. Finally, be persistent. Let nothing and no one interrupt your internal building. Protect your image as one would guard a flame in a storm. The universe responds, the law vibrates, the mind creates, but only organized, rhythmic, and persistent thought gives birth to lasting forms. Everything else is noise. Chapter 9. How to eliminate mental resistance, doubt, chaotic emotion, and dispersed thought as dissolvers of form. So far, we have established that thought, when clear, sustained, and harmonious, acts as a creative force capable of organizing external conditions according to the internal mold. However, for this force to act fully, it is essential to eliminate all internal resistance. Just as a sculptor may have the most sublime vision, if his chisel vibrates with tremors or his marble is brittle, the work will not manifest. The most powerful thought can be dissolved by internal currents of doubt, confusion, or emotional disorder. The enemy is not outside. The universe does not impede anything. The only real obstacle between desire and its manifestation is the mental resistance that the individual introduces into their vibratory field. And what is this resistance? It is the silent contradiction that interferes with the frequency of creative thought. It is that yes, but which erodes faith. It is the disordered emotion that contaminates the pure image. It is the scattered thought that interrupts the vibratory sequence with opposing ideas. Resistance does not shout, it whispers, and that whisper is enough to break the coherence of the decree. Doubt is the most common form of resistance. It is the mental virus that nullifies the order given. The person thinks, I will have it, and right after, what if it doesn't happen? That doubt, barely formulated, breaks the vibratory flow, creates interference in the subconscious field, and halts the response of the universal mind, not because it punishes, but because the law cannot obey two supposed frequencies at once. Likewise, chaotic emotion introduces turbulence into the creative energy. Anger, guilt, fear, resentment. These are destabilizing forces that prevent thought from acting as a clear channel. A misaligned emotion is enough to distort the most perfect mental image. The law requires purity of vibration, and purity cannot coexist with an emotional field that bursts without direction. Finally, scattered thought is perhaps the most insidious of the dissolvers. It consists of jumping from idea to idea without continuity, visualizing one goal in the morning and another in the afternoon, affirming health and then complaining about illness, declaring abundance and then cursing scarcity. This vibratory zigzag prevents the form from holding in the creative field. The energy finds no stable mold, and therefore there is no lasting manifestation. So how do we eliminate this resistance? The first step is conscious observation of thought. Just as a gardener examines their garden to remove weeds, the thinker must review their mental and emotional field. What thoughts repeat silently? What emotions emerge? What doubts? What foreign images? What mental habits occupy spaces without permission? The second step is systematic replacement. It is not enough to repress doubt. It must be replaced with certainty. It is not enough to silence emotion. It must be transmuted. This is achieved through affirmation, constructive repetition, positive visualization, and the deliberate cultivation of elevated emotions. Resistance is not destroyed by force, but by vibratory coherence. The mind cannot be empty. It is either directed or invaded. The third step is the training of inner silence. A mind that consciously silences itself each day, even if only for minutes, becomes a sharpened tool. In silence, resistances come to light. There, the fears that operate from the shadows are revealed. There, cracks in thought are perceived, and when seen, they can be corrected. The fourth step is firm decision. An indecisive mind, even with noble desires, is incapable of holding a vibration strong enough to crystallize it into form. The universe responds to clarity, not ambiguity. Deciding is closing inner doors to what you don't want and swinging wide open the doors to what you have chosen. Finally, the fifth step is continuous vigilance. Thought is like a river. It must stay within its course. If you allow it, it will overflow. If you contain it and guide it, it becomes a driving force. Self-mastery is the price of conscious manifestation. It is not about fighting resistance, but deactivating it through the construction of a coherent and sustained vibratory field. Where there is order, doubt cannot enter. Where there is certainty, emotion calms. Where there is clear purpose, thought finds continuity. And when this occurs, the form appears as an exact reflection of the work previously done. The universe denies nothing. It simply waits for the channel to be clear, and that channel is you. Chapter 10. Understanding as real power. One only possesses what is mentally understood at its cause. The human mind does not conquer through blind repetition or fleeting enthusiasm. It conquers through understanding. Where there is understanding, there is mastery. Where there is mastery, there is power. And where there is power, form bends to the mind, like clay in the hands of the potter. Nothing is truly yours until you have understood it at its cause. The modern world is filled with people who desire effects without understanding the causes. They want health but ignore the law that governs the body's harmony. They long for wealth but are unaware of the principles that govern the mental circulation of abundance. They plead for peace but nourish thoughts of conflict. And so they live under the shadow of unstable results, dependent on chance or blind effort, because they have not penetrated with their minds the causes of what they seek. To understand is to illuminate, to enter the hidden mechanism of mental laws and see clearly what was once accepted as a mystery. Understanding frees because it replaces superstition with functional knowledge. The law cannot be circumvented, but it can be mastered by those who know it, and the knowledge of the law makes a man the master of his destiny. Every external condition has an internal cause. This has already been established. But now we must go further. It is not enough to know that a cause exists. One must understand it, identify it, examine it, and transform it if necessary. This transformation only occurs when one reaches an understanding of how, when, and why it operates. For example, someone who repeats prosperity affirmations without understanding that wealth is a mental form of circulation will end up frustrated because their vibration does not align with the deeper content of what they declare. On the other hand, someone who understands that money is not an object, but an expression of thought, value, and service will begin to vibrate in harmony with the law of supply. Without apparent effort, opportunities will come to them. They understood the cause, and therefore they received the effect. Ignorance divides, understanding unifies. Ignorance says, "This illness came from outside." Understanding affirms, "It was the reflection of a sustained thought." Ignorance blames destiny. Understanding takes on the mental cause and corrects the course. To understand is to possess in the mental plane, and what is possessed in the mind manifests in form. This principle is irreversible. The cause in the universe is never material. It is vibratory. The form is the visible consequence of an invisible pattern. Therefore, only one who understands the inner world can transform the external world, not as a refuge, but as a causal laboratory. The deep understanding of a principle activates its power. What is needed is not force but clarity. The law of magnetism, when understood, allowed humanity to master electricity. The law of thought, when understood, allows the individual to master their experience. The universe is not whimsical. It responds without exception to the principles that sustain it. The greatest of all is this: the mind is cause. Now there is understanding that is intellectual and understanding that is experiential. The former consists of knowing that something is true. The latter is acting from that certainty. It is not enough to accept that thought creates. One must live as if creation is already taking place. It is not enough to know that the mind organizes matter. One must organize the mind as the architect of their reality. And this is only achieved through the internalization of the law. Understood law, activated law, manifested law. Therefore, growth in power does not come from emotional effort, but from the progressive understanding of eternal truths. Always ask yourself, do I understand what I am affirming? Do I understand why I visualize? Why do I repeat? Why do I sustain this image? Do I understand the law I'm invoking? For if you do not understand, it is not yet yours. But if you understand, even if nothing has changed yet in the external world, everything has already changed at the origin. Partial knowledge produces partial results. Deep knowledge produces inevitable results. Understanding is the key that unlocks the subconscious, and once activated, the power flows without resistance. Do not fear the conditions. Fear only not understanding their cause. For the day you understand how you have produced something, you will also know how to transform it. And then you will be free, not because the world changed, but because you understood how it works, and he who understands rules. Chapter 11. Money, Health, and Conditions as Mental Effects. Every external good is the shadow of a sustained inner affirmation. A person who does not understand the mental law lives enslaved by conditions. They despair when money is lacking, fear for their body when illness arises, and attribute their successes or failures to chance, destiny, or external factors. However, every external good, be it wealth, health, harmony, or success, is not a cause but a consequence, not an origin but a reflection, not an entity but the shadow of a sustained inner affirmation held with persistence and faith. Matter does not precede thought. Matter is coagulated thought, just as ice is water in a frozen state. Your visible conditions are crystallized ideas. This is a universal and immutable law. Therefore, to modify the effect, one must alter the cause. Changing external conditions inevitably requires transforming the internal vibration that originates them. Take money, for example. It is merely a symbol of exchange, an external manifestation of energy that circulates according to the consciousness of value held by the one who receives or loses it. Money goes where it is welcomed, not by whim, but by vibrational affinity. If an individual harbors thoughts of lack, fear of the future, guilt regarding prosperity, or inherited beliefs about the evil of money, then even if they work diligently, they will mentally sabotage any possibility of economic flow. The universe does not punish, it responds. Conversely, someone who mentally affirms that wealth is natural, that good flows without obstacles, and that they deserve abundance because it is a legitimate expression of universal power, will attract, without force, everything that resonates with that conviction. And not only will they attract money, they will attract opportunities, ideas, relationships, intuitions, and tangible results that align with that internal mental image. The same applies to health. The body, though physical, is governed by the mind. No organ exists that does not respond to the individual's sustained emotional tone. Continued anxiety, chronic resentment, deep-seated sadness. These alter the balance of the nervous system, weaken resistance, and predispose the body to illness. But they do so because they have been sustained as internal realities. They are not accidents, but manifestations of a disordered vibrational field. Conversely, the conscious affirmation of harmony, the visualization of cellular perfection, gratitude for bodily function, liberating forgiveness, and mental peace create a vibrational environment in which health is naturally restored, not as a miracle but as a result. Because the cell responds to thought, the blood listens to emotion, and the body is subordinate to the mind. As for general conditions, work, relationships, housing, conflicts, or peace, they all follow this same law. None of them exist isolated from your mental field. All are concrete expressions of sustained ideas. Every difficult relationship is a mirror of an unresolved internal idea. Every unsatisfactory job reflects a self-image without direction. Every environmental limitation reveals an internal mold that needs transformation. And here lies the inescapable principle. There is no outside. There is only the inside manifested. There is no other. There is only your reflection. There is no loose circumstance. There is only sustained vibration taking form. This knowledge not only liberates, it empowers. Because by understanding it, the individual stops begging for external solutions and begins to operate on the only plane where they have complete dominion, the plane of their own consciousness. Do you desire more money? Then hold with faith the idea of value, of flow, of elevated purpose, and of natural generosity. Do you desire health? Then think harmony, feel it. Affirm that every cell responds to divine order and eliminate from your life every corrosive emotion. Do you desire a new life? Wake up each day with the mental image of that new life as if it were already underway. Vibrate in it, live in it, believe in it more than in the visible. Because the visible is only the shadow, and you are not made of shadows. You are made of the thought that gives them origin. You cannot possess what you do not think. You cannot maintain what you do not understand. And you cannot transform anything without first affirming it within yourself as already transformed. That is the law. And this law does not fail because it does not depend on chance or desire, but on thought, sustained with knowledge, method, and coherence. Every external good, repeat it and engrave it, is the inevitable shadow of a clear, repeated, and emotionally charged inner affirmation. It is not magic, it is science, and whoever applies it receives. Chapter 12. The Law of Attraction as the Result of Defined Thought. Attraction is not a mysterious phenomenon, but a response to a precise frequency. Much has been said and written about the so-called law of attraction. It has been confused with superstition, wrapped in fantasy, or misinterpreted as a whimsical power that rewards some and punishes others. But this law, correctly understood, is neither magical nor mysterious. It is an exact, inevitable, and measurable response to the vibrational tone of sustained thought. The law of attraction is a law of correspondence. That is, what a person firmly holds in their mind, with clarity, emotion, and consistency, begins to draw toward them all forms, circumstances, people, and events that vibrate in harmony with that thought. The mind is both a transmitter and receiver of vibrations, and the universe, composed of a plastic mental substance, responds to those vibrations like a mirror reflects light, faithfully echoing what is presented to it. It is not pleading that attracts, not need, not shapeless desire. It is frequency, and frequency is nothing more than the sum of your thought plus your feeling, repeated with consistency. If you think about abundance but feel fear, the dominant vibration will be one of lack. If you affirm health but harbor resentment, the frequency will not be harmonious. The universe does not respond to words but to vibrations, and vibration is what you sustain deep within, not what you superficially declare. This explains why so many fail when trying to apply the law. Because their thought is not defined, or their vibration is contradictory, or their faith is intermittent. For the law to operate with precision, thought must be clear like a written instruction, constant like the heartbeat, and harmonious like a pure note. Only then will the emitted frequency be precise, and to a precise frequency, the universe responds with mathematical rigor. Consider a magnet. It does not wish to attract iron, it simply vibrates in such a way that iron is inevitably drawn to it. The mind works the same way. Like attracts like. Defined thought is a vibrational magnet, and its power depends on its clarity, intensity, and consistency. You do not attract what you wish for. You attract what you are in vibration, and what you are is determined by what you think, what you feel, and what you consistently do. That is why it is essential to organize the mind as a clear broadcasting station. It is not enough to sound awake or to utter empty phrases. You must think with direction, visualize in detail, affirm with power, and feel with conviction. And you must do it every single day, without pause, without hesitation, until that frequency becomes the dominant note in your mental field. When that happens, you'll begin to notice a series of apparent coincidences, people showing up at just the right time, unexpected opportunities, paths opening where before there were only walls. And then you'll understand it wasn't chance, it was attraction, and that attraction was not forced, it was allowed. Because the universe does not resist defined thought, it follows it. Now, attracting is not enough. What is attracted must be maintained, and that is only possible if the frequency is sustained. That's why the work does not end when good arrives, it begins a new stage, that of sustaining the vibrational consciousness that brought it. Because the universe, just as it gives, can also withdraw, not as punishment, but as vibrational adjustment. Understand this deeply. You are not in the hands of chance, you are in the hands of a law that you yourself activate. And this law does not ask if you deserve it, it asks if you vibrate it. Because deserving is not a moral judgment, it is a mental state. And if you think like someone who already has, feel like someone who already is, and act like someone who already knows, then the obedient universe will confirm that identity with visible results. So then, do not invoke the law as a favor. Activate it like an engineer activates a machine, with precision. Defined thought is the blueprint, emotion is the energy, repetition is the chisel, and attraction is the natural result of that invisible architecture. Nothing can resist a defined thought that is sustained and felt with truth, because in the language of the universe, mental clarity is authority. Chapter 13, Concentration, How to Direct the Mind Without Deviation. Sustained thought is more powerful than 1,000 scattered thoughts. The human mind is the most formidable tool in the universe, but like any instrument, its power is directly proportional to the degree to which it can be directed without deviation. Just as a beam of light, when focused through a lens, can start a fire, thought, when firmly held on a single objective, acquires a creative power impossible to achieve through scattered thinking. The most common error in the art of thinking is the lack of concentration. Most minds jump from idea to idea like a frightened bird unable to find a branch to rest upon. They live in perpetual oscillation between desire and fear, between hope and doubt, between what they want and what they believe is possible. This oscillation fragments mental energy and reduces it to weak, chaotic, and contradictory vibrations. Under such conditions, the mind cannot create, it can only react. Concentration, on the other hand, is the discipline through which thought becomes decree. To concentrate is not to force the mind, nor to tense or exhaust it. It is to gather all its forces onto a single point. Just like a channeled river turns the mill wheel, while overflowing water is lost at the banks, a concentrated mind does not doubt, does not distract, does not disperse. Its energy accumulates, its vibration intensifies, its message to the universe becomes clear, powerful, irresistible. The universe does not respond to words, but to the coherent intensity of a sustained frequency, and that frequency can only be achieved when attention has been trained to remain fixed, like a compass needle that always points north. To develop this power, the first step is silence. In voluntary silence, man discovers the wild nature of his mind, and by observing it without identifying with it, the process of inner mastery begins. Then comes the deliberate practice of holding a single mental image for several minutes a day, without allowing the intrusion of foreign thoughts, without dialoguing with doubt, without entertaining the fugitive. This exercise, though simple in appearance, is the foundation of all mental mastery. What you can hold in your mind with absolute concentration, without deviation, will begin to organize itself in the universal field. This is not a miracle. It is sustained vibration seeking expression in form. The mind, when acting with continuity, becomes a direct cause, and concentrated cause produces inevitable effects. Many wish to change their lives, but they haven't learned to remain for even 5 minutes with a single mental image without distraction. They wish, yes, but do not concentrate. They dream, but do not fix. They react, but do not govern. And so they live at the mercy of the external world, instead of building it from within. A mind trained in concentration becomes a precision instrument, and with that instrument, any reality can be carved. A business, perfect health, a full life. Because what is sustained with clarity, the universe replicates, and what is scattered vanishes like mist in the sun. Here lies the true secret of success in every spiritual or material endeavor. Sustained thought upon a defined objective, maintained day after day with faith, positive emotion, and unshakable attention. This does not require physical effort nor special talent. It requires will and discipline. It requires deciding that the mind will not be a battlefield for foreign ideas, but a closed workshop where the soul's visions are forged. And the more this concentration is trained, the faster the manifestation will be, because mental energy will not be lost in secondary branches, but will flow directly to the root of the purpose. A constant drop pierces stone, a constant thought transforms life. Therefore, from now on, dedicate yourself to thinking like an architect, not like a passerby. Choose your image, clarify it, feel it, and then concentrate your mind on it as if nothing else existed. Repeat this act every day without evaluating immediate results. The seed does not germinate when the farmer watches it. It germinates when he trusts its process and continues to sow. The universe responds to sustained thought, not to fleeting enthusiasm. And you don't need to think more. You need to think better. Think with direction. Think with unity. Because one clear, sustained thought is worth more than 1,000 disordered ideas. Chapter 14. Scientific Thought, Repetition, Intensity, and Certainty. How can we form mental structures so strong that reality cannot resist them? For thought to be an effective cause in the realm of form, it must operate under principles as defined and precise as those of engineering or chemistry. Just as a bridge cannot be built on loose wood, and a chemical experiment cannot succeed without precise measurements, mental creation must be based on scientific foundations, not on emotional impulses or sporadic superstitions. And those foundations are 3: repetition, intensity, and certainty. The mind, by its very nature, obeys the law of habit. That is, what is frequently repeated becomes the dominant pattern. The first time an idea is introduced into consciousness, it may be weak, even fleeting. But when that same idea is repeated day after day, with a clear image, with affirmative words, with congruent emotion, it begins to be engraved into the deep layers of the subconscious as a constant command. And what the subconscious accepts as constant, reality begins to shape without resistance. Therefore, repetition is the chisel with which the mental structure is sculpted. No thought has the power to create unless it has been sustained. A fleeting idea is like a spark in the wind, but an idea repeated with method and decision becomes a sustained fire capable of altering the very matter of experience. But repetition alone is not enough. It must be charged with intensity. And intensity is not measured by the volume of the voice, nor by the theatricality of the gesture, but by the emotion infused into the thought. A cold thought is an order without energy. An emotionally charged thought is a vibration that penetrates the universal ether and stirs the invisible threads of form. That is why it is crucial that the repeated thought be accompanied by a congruent emotion. If you think of prosperity, but do so with anxiety, you weaken the signal. If you affirm health, but do so with fear, you sabotage the image. But if you repeat with joy, with anticipatory gratitude, with an internal sense of lived reality, then the mental structure begins to gain density, strength, and direction. To this combination of repetition and intensity, a third factor must be added: certainty, without which the entire vibratory structure collapses. Certainty is not blind faith. It is silent knowing. It is the mental attitude of one who does not ask when or how, but who internally affirms, "This already is because it is being formed in the only plane that matters, the plane of cause." Certainty is the vibratory atmosphere in which thought blooms without opposition. Without certainty, the mental image weakens. With certainty, the image becomes destiny. To think scientifically, then, is to build mental images with constant repetition, directed emotion, and firm identity with the result. It is not about thinking many things. It is about thinking one single thing, with depth and method. until that thing is no longer just an idea but becomes a form. Just as a sculptor does not strike at random, but with precise vision and controlled repetition, the thinker who wishes to form a new reality does not cast wishes into the dark, but chisels an internal image day after day, without wavering, until that image becomes so vivid, so solid, and so filled with truth that the obedient universe has no choice but to replicate it. This organized thought is not the result of overflowing willpower, but of the orderly application of mental principles. Each thought is a wave, each emotion a charge, each repetition a consolidation. And when these three unite, the vibratory field they generate surpasses the resistance of the external world. Reality does not resist the perfect mental structure, because form always follows cause, and the cause in this mental universe is sustained thought with certainty. Therefore, if you truly desire something, if you have chosen it with clarity, visualized it in detail, repeated it each day with vivid emotion, and acted as one who has already received it, then do not ask if it will come. Ask instead, when will I stop blocking it? Because creation is certain. The only thing that separates thought from manifestation is time and the quality of the vibration with which that thought has been sustained. And when the structure is strong enough, the universe bows before it. Because the universe does not choose, it responds. And it responds to scientific thought, just as music responds to a score. Chapter 15. Inspired action movement as an extension of the mind. The body only executes what the mind has already established. At this point in the study, it becomes essential to understand a principle that completes the circuit of mental creation. External action is not the cause, but the culmination of the invisible process. Just as the steam that moves turbines is not the source of energy, but its manifestation, physical action is the echo of organized and emotionally charged thought. The body moves because the mind has already declared the path. The illusion of the average person is to believe they must act in order to obtain, that they must do in order to achieve, that they must keep moving to provoke change. But the wise know that action without mental direction is not only ineffective, it is effort without result. To move without having thought is like planting without first tilling the soil. Thought precedes all true action. Thought is the architect, emotion is the energy, will is the silent builder, and action is the natural movement of a structure already erected on the internal plane. This is why we say that right action is not born from impulse or external pressure, but from inspiration. And inspiration is not a random lightning bolt. It is the vibrational response of the body to a mental structure that has been held with clarity and conviction. When the thought is defined, the emotion aligned, and the will focused, action flows effortlessly. There is no struggle, no hesitation, no fatigue. There is certainty in the movement, efficiency in every step, and the result arrives as a logical consequence. The body does not create, it executes. The body does not decide, it manifests what has already been decided in the invisible. Thus, the art of action is not about rushing or forcing oneself. It is about listening for the moment when the internal image has become so solid, so real, that the next step arises without effort. This is inspired action, not the kind that pushes, but the kind that responds to an already established certainty. It is a flow, not a struggle. It is the natural extension of the creative thought. Many people fail because they act before they have created. Others never act, waiting for everything to manifest without their physical participation. Both extremes are errors. The mind creates, but action executes. Thought directs, but the body obeys. And perfect balance is reached when every act is the reflection of a firmly established inner image. So when you have completed your mental work, when you have visualized, affirmed, felt, and sustained, do not be afraid to move, but move from inspiration, not from lack. Move from certainty, not from fear. Move as someone who has already received, not as someone still pleading. Inspired action is recognized by the fragrance of peace it carries. It does not agitate, it does not despair, it does not demand. It feels like the wave that breaks on the shore, not because it must, but because it is the natural result of a force already unleashed offshore. Likewise, your action must be the visible wave of an invisible sea that has already stirred within you. Here lies the secret that transforms action into power. Only act when you feel you cannot not act. Only move when the internal image gently but undeniably pushes you forward. Only execute when your step is the extension of your certainty. Then every word, every decision, every gesture will carry the seal of the inevitable, because the universe does not resist a mind that has created with clarity, nor a body that moves in perfect harmony with that mind. When you think clearly, you act without error. When you feel truth, you walk without fatigue. And when your action is the echo of your mental construction, the entire external world silently collaborates in your favor, because you are not acting. You are concluding a work that has already been completed in the invisible. And that is true action. Action that does not demand a result because it already contains it. Action that does not chase because it already possesses. Action that does not doubt because it already knows.